whom you've just seen in Tongues Untied. He's a poet and cultural activist.
In San Francisco, we have Brandy Moore, Senior Assistant to California Assembly Speaker Willie Brown and Chairman of the Black Coalition on AIDS. Reggie Williams, Project Director for the National Task Force on AIDS Prevention, and Alan Miller, a high school teacher and actor who appeared in Tongues Untied. Let's start with you, Alan. What was it like for you as a gay black man, a high school teacher, to be involved in the making of this movie?
A couple of things. One, it was very exciting. It was a lot of fun to do. Another thing is that, of course, when it came out and when it was on national television, on public television, it created a bit of stir at the school, and that allowed me the opportunity to come out.
There has been a slight audio problem. Are we okay now with our sound? Let's just do a quick check with New York. Alan, was it difficult for you to come out at school?
It was difficult. It's always difficult, but it's something that I've done many, many times, and it's something that gay people who are out do many, many times. There were problems with teachers and students, things that you can't really do anything about, kind of routine harassment that I guess that you'd expect. But there was also support. When I think about the positive things, I feel very heartened. A couple days after the film aired, a teacher came into my room and said that she supported me, and she said that she thought that it was a very worthwhile project.
But yet one of your students ran out of the room when you told
One
them.
of the times when I brought up the issue of the film and of my sexuality, a student ran out of the room and shut the door.
Brandy, is it difficult for gay men of color within the black community?
It's difficult all the time. Gay men of color, especially African American men, in a community that is really bound up, if you will, in issues around religion and the very negative picture that we as gay men have been put into. It's very difficult for a man to come out, whether his age level doesn't really matter. It's economic issues, all of those kinds of things. But for there not to be any support, that is the most painful part of it, because you're out there, even at the age of 40, 50 years old sometimes, thinking that you're the only one. There are millions of us all over this country. And yes, it's difficult, and that's why films like Tongues Untied are so important, because they help us connect to each other, to take care of each other late at night and early in the morning, in the times when it's most difficult to stand up and be free. We always know that there are some of us there, 3 of us on stage, many in the audience. We are there for each other, and that's very important.
I know New York has been having some audio problems. Let's go back now so they can introduce their panel and continue the discussion, and then we'll be back. Bob?
Thank you, Ginger. Our tongues were tied briefly, but our audio is back. Thanks. The film you've just seen was the 3rd and final film in our 4-hour coast-to-coast town meeting celebrating lesbian and gay pride. And joining us here in New York to talk about it, Essex Hemphill, whom you've just seen in Tongues Untied. He's a poet and cultural activist, author of Earthlight and Conditions, and the editor of Brother to Brother, an anthology of new writings by black gay men to be released this fall. Scott Hirosa is relatively new to activism. He's in the process of forming an organization of gay Asian men. And Robert Garcia, a community activist and founder of House of Color, and founder of Latino AIDS Activist Caucus of ACT UP. Welcome. We want to talk to Essex in just a moment, but I was thinking about you, Scott. In a sense, the film we've just seen, we've seen black gay men as if you will, a subculture within a subculture with very special problems. That next step, Asian gay men, I mean, there's a need for a group, there's a need for what we've talked about, support. What is that situation?
I would say that the film really was, I really thought the film brought out a lot of the issues which are common to people of color, gay people of color. In particular, when I came to New York, there was no Asian organization for gay men. There was one which was mixed, white and Asian, but unfortunately we can't really deal with issues of racism in that kind of a framework. In addition to that, I think I feel as an Asian gay man that I feel very isolated sometimes before I got involved in this group. And the issues of invisibility come out where in a bar, the white beauty standard is pretty much makes Asians feel unattractive. Asians feel like they can't feel attracted to other Asians, and other issues like that, which I think this group will be addressing. And I also feel like something that we want to address as gay Asians is how racism affects our interaction with other people of color groups, and to look at some of the class issues and sexism issues on top of that.
Essex, the film addresses specifically black gay men, but it speaks to Scott as well, you feel?
Well, I don't find that to be an unusual quality that occurs when there's truth. If there's truth and honesty and forthrightness, then the work itself should be able to speak across many ethnic and cultural differences, if you will, racial differences, etc. Scott's response to the film, I don't find surprising. I am aware of the fact that there are issues that Scott and both Robert and I find in common as men of color that we confront when we're dealing with the white gay and lesbian community, if you will, as an entity unto itself. I would ask whether or not you found any identification with the film.
As a
Just as a human being.
as a presumably straight
As a human
white man. This has not been clarified. Absolutely. I mean, the sense of brotherhood, the sense of men being together, of men loving each other. Less, obviously, the sexuality resonated less with me than the sharing and the trusting among men, which is a tremendous problem, I think, in every population.
Well, tremendous problem, probably because of the construction of masculinity that's been, thank you, the Western model of masculinity, actually, which subjugates not only white males at times, those that decide to come out of the closet and confront their sexuality, but always confront all other groups of people who are considered other by their very construction. So, I'll let you have it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for including me in the discussion. Robert, I wondered if you wanted to say anything to anybody in San Francisco.
Yeah, actually, this is part, I think, of like a bubbling up and an actual creating visibility for us. People of color, lesbians and gays, people of color are redefining our own identity and finding our own agenda within the whole lesbian and gay community. And I just wanted to know, here in New York, there are a lot of cultural activism going on, and we are visualizing through video and film work and whatnot, and cultural events are our cultural heritage that we take on, that we always are with us, that's always with us. And I was wondering if that type of excitement that we have here in New York is there in San Francisco.
Is there anybody in particular you'd like to talk to, or will you let Ginger pick somebody for you?
Go for it, Ginger.
Ginger?
It's all yours,
Well,
Ginger.
I think Reggie wants to answer that question. Reggie.
I think I can address that. In the context of dealing with AIDS and HIV, people of color, gay men of color in San Francisco have come together to deal with the issues that impact, like we found from New York, across all racial lines, and looking at what our needs are and identifying what we need to do for ourselves in helping our people and in our community get through this problem of HIV.
Having dual identities, is that a problem?
You mean as a black
man
gay
and a gay man, yes.
Well, when I wake up in the morning, I see a black man when I look in the mirror, but I'm also a gay man when I wake up. It only has, for me, it only has a problem, it only is a problem when other people see it as a problem, whether they be black or white. For me, I'm one person. You know, I am the same when I wake up in the morning, same person that I went to bed as I went to bed. So I don't see it as my problem. I see it as other people's problem.
I'd like to have a piece of that as well. There's two important points to make here in reference to the man who asked about the cultural things that we're doing. There are groups of people here in the Bay Area in San Francisco who are trying to to bring us all together, to mobilize us so that we work together as people of color. A group called Unity is trying to bring us together so that you will definitely see us as hot colors, all different colors, in the march tomorrow as we broadcast to you around the world. And the other piece is, I think it's an unfair question to ask about dual issues for African Americans and other people of color, because there is simply no way that we are allowed to peel off a piece of ourselves and hold that up to the world.
Does the black community expect you to do that?
The black community expects us to peel off a piece and just be black. The white community expects us to peel off a piece and give them a very positive set of images. Either I have to be the super stud, the man who will do anything with anybody because I'm so sexually empowered. They expect me to take less in the world and be just at the base level of the economic structure, and to suffer without having appropriate health care, housing, education, or mobility. And so the whole world holds up a lot of different things. Fortunately, because we are African American men and we have survived for 400 years in this society, and because we are joined with other people of color around the world, we find tremendous strength in looking at each other and taking reward from each other and helping each other to survive.
In the black community, homosexuality is not new. It's not something that just came out of the 80s and the 70s. Black gay and lesbian people have been visible in the black community for years. And there may be heterosexual black people who will not want to hear that. They will not agree with me. But we, in fact, know that it's true. There have been very prominent black gay and lesbian people within the black community for many, many years. What you are seeing now is a proliferation of black groups and black people coming forward and becoming visible. My organization just completed a national knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors study of black gay men around their attitudes of HIV.
Let's just halt here for a sec. We'll get back to this.
All right.
I understand there's a question in New York on this.
Thank you, Ginger. We do have somebody in the studio audience who wants to ask a question. Sir?
Yeah, this is a great opportunity, I think, for us, particularly as black gay men, to have some dialogue with the larger community, to air our issues. It's also an opportunity for us to engage people who are the producers of this show and around questions of our representation in the media. One of my real concerns, what really disturbed me about this setting up of Tongues Untied, the introduction, was framing the issues it raised as disturbing. It seems that whenever we speak honestly as people of color, especially within the lesbian and gay community, but not limited to that context, what we're perceived as saying is dangerous or subversive or controversial. And to perpetuate that sort of framing is, disturbs me, and I wanted to raise that and ask people to respond to it.
Who would like to respond to that? Robert?
Brandy?
They're doing it there.
Oh, they're going to do it there?
Yeah.
No, we can untie our tongues again and go to San Francisco.
You know,
I have a real concern about the controversial part of it, and maybe because I take energy out of always being controversial. I'm an African American man, and any context that I have to educate people about what it is to be that kind of a man who happens to be gay, I try to take that opportunity. If it's controversial, so be it. The rest of the world will have to deal with that, because I've had to deal with the oppression that they have put on me for the entirety of my life. So I don't mind being controversial. The beauty of it, though, having Tongues Untied, and thank you, Marlon, and all the people who participated in that film for helping me connect with other African American and men of color. That's a significant piece. And if we can set that up so that we have better opportunities and more opportunities to share with each other about who we are, where we are, and how we are going to survive through battles like AIDS, then I think we ought to take those opportunities. They can be positive for us. We need to let African American people and other people of color who happen to be lesbian or gay, that we are there, we are everywhere, and we have to strengthen ourselves and take care of each other, because we have a long battle ahead. And being controversial, that's okay. Each of us should recruit ourselves to be controversial if we're going to continue to fight racism and oppression.
And as
definitely agree
as
with
the
Marlon.
moderator, I think the point needs to be made that this was a disturbing and graphic movie. And that's not just about protecting our NEA funding, it's about the kind of images, sexually explicit images that we're seeing. I think it was a tremendously powerful piece of work. But to say that it was not graphic and explicit would be a disservice.
It's about visibility, though, and that's the point that I was going to make before we got cut off to go back to New York. Black, gay, and lesbian people are becoming visible. There has been a proliferation of groups around the country that are standing up and saying that black, gay, and lesbian people are everywhere. My organization, Black and White Men Together, Men of All Colors Together, other countries, Gay Men of African Descent. Here, another group, Black Gay Men's Exchange. There are groups all over this country that are coming together to deal with black, gay, and lesbian people's issues. And it's good. We need those. And it empowers the whole gay and lesbian community when we, as people of color, can come together and deal with our issues first and become stronger to deal with the broader issues of the broader gay and lesbian community. And we can't have our agenda set by the mainstream, quote-unquote, white community for us. We have to set our own agenda.
Does that include the gay white community?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's who I'm speaking to directly about right now, the white gay community. We're part of that community as well, but we need to deal with our issues as people of color first.
Let's go back to New York. Bob, I'd be interested to hear whether the people in New York feel that the gay white community sets the agenda for people
Well,
of
I'm
color.
sure Essex Hempel wants to add something to this discussion.
Well, I wanted to respond to Ginger, rather, and gender. But Ginger's commentary about Tongues Untied being disturbing and provocative, that is very much a media call. In that anytime I can sit up, one thing I said when I was sitting in the green room is that I was amazed to finally see something like this, Tongues Untied, on television. It's not disturbing, it's very empowering, and it's very necessary for not only a film like this, but other films that talk about the diversity of not only just natural human sexuality, but deals honestly with some of the problems that the communities are faced with. So I think it's from your perspective as being a person in the media and someone who's squeamish about these kinds of things. But,
You'd be surprised,
well,
I'd like to say that I think it was perhaps one of the most powerful movies that I've ever seen.
well, perhaps it should.
I think your writing was extraordinary. I think that every television station in the country should be airing this.
And that's
But yet at
exactly
the
how
same
I
time,
feel.
there were some explicit, what would be considered by the FCC explicit images.
But we're
That's all
not
I was pointing out.
concerned about the FCC. We're talking about finally bringing this question of our sexualities to the table and dealing with it in a way that's forthright and honest. We continue to be concerned about FCC and NEA and all of these institutions and individuals who are more than likely doing freakier things than kissing another man.
I agree with you with that, and I should point out, though, it's my understanding that only New York and San Francisco have run this to
At
this
this
point.
point.
I would
But what does
hope
that
to
say
see
about-
other
what does that say
stations pick
about
it up as well.
Public broadcasting networks that are obligated to view, to produce and to show various communities' products. What does that say about them that it has taken so long, 20 years since Stonewall, for finally there to be a positive black gay male movie experience shown on PBS? What does that say about that?
And not only-
that says who is at the gate? Who is saying what's going to be in and how is it going to be discussed? I mean, you know, it's been 20 years since word is out, and now the word is in our communities, and we're producing our own stuff. And I take great exception to it being pre-labeled as disturbing or as troubling or as any way that it was, because that sets up for the audience preconceptions that don't exist. And
Brandy?
there is definitely, but there is a greater issue here, and that is an issue of audience and who is the audience. And what is so affirming about Tongues Untied is that you don't know who the audience is. I mean, a lot of my gay white friends, when they watch Tongues Untied, say, you know what, I'm not quite sure where my place is in this audience. And I said, that's a little bit embarrassing. And I say, well, how did you feel about that? And well, they say, I don't know, was it speaking to me, was it not? And I said, well, that's how people of color have felt all the time. Now we are talking amongst ourselves, and we are creating a video images of ourselves, and we are putting that out to the greater audience. But if whether you get the message or not is not the issue. The issue is that we are beginning to dialogue amongst ourselves, and we will set our own agenda.
Somebody in San Francisco wants to dialogue with you.
I'd like to speak to that as one of the poets in Tongues Untied, and as someone who teaches. You know, I'm always hearing that, well, there aren't pieces for us to teach that deal with your issues and any black issues, with gay issues, with lesbian issues. And it's something that happens all the time. When we do produce things that can be used, they're not acceptable, or the mainstream in some way objects to them. So for me, it was very, very exciting to be involved with the project to answer some of that criticism before it gets out, because who knows how many voices have been silenced before they've even spoken.
Exactly.
How many gay and lesbian black people across the country have been silenced before they've opened their mouths? And no one's concerned about that. And it's really wonderful to have an opportunity to say, here's something you can look at, here's something you can read. It's okay to write to this audience, and this audience and this voice is a worthwhile, it's a worthwhile voice. It has something to say. There's something that you can do with that voice. There's a way to let out that energy, and that's really exciting.
I would like to also affirm what Alan has just said by also adding that, yes, there is some credit to be given to both of the television stations, respectively, for running all three of these films this evening. Perhaps this is a very tenuous first step towards making the airwaves much more reflective of the true society that we live in. I have personally gotten tired of seeing cop shows. I've gotten tired of seeing people of color cast as hookers, as thieves, etc. And I've just gotten tired, basically, of the general sexism that exists in the television industry in its regard to women and the kinds of roles that they're portrayed in. So that if this is a very tenuous first step, I hope that you will be brave enough to consider other kinds of alternative programming other than my seeing whales washed up on oil-soaked shores, which I am concerned about, mind you. But that's still not the texture and the context of a human life. That is still a problem.
But to add to that is that no matter whether or not they show it, we are tired enough to the extent that we are going to produce it. We are going to create our own outlets and our own events, regardless of whether you acknowledge us or not. We are here, and we're not going to go away.
And I hope we'll be here to show it. Thank you all very much for being with us tonight. During the last 4 hours, we've heard from many different voices in the gay community who came together to share their thoughts on a number of issues at the forefront of the battle for gay rights. Tomorrow, they will join together again in a day of celebration. The theme of tomorrow's Gay Pride March here in New York is We Are Family, remembering that family are those who come together in support of one another. From New York, this is Robert Lipsyte. And now a closing word from Ginger Casey in San Francisco.
I'd like to thank everybody who came out for tonight's program, and I'd like to apologize. 4 hours does not seem to be enough for this issue. In San Francisco, the parade theme this year is different than New York's, but it encompasses the hopes and dreams of all families. Hundreds of thousands of people will take to the streets tomorrow in San Francisco declaring gay and lesbian pride under the banner, "The future is ours." In San Francisco, on behalf of KQED, I'm Ginger Casey. Good night.
Now it's a dream. tonight. Black, 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 gay, 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 gay. Black, 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 gay, 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 gay. Black, 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 gay, 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 gay. Homophobia's got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. Homophobia's got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho.
This special presentation is made possible by the members of KQED in San Francisco and by the members of 13 WNET in New York.